Jose State at USC. So obviously the story of the game was Caleb Williams again having a great game, 18 and 25, 278 yards and 4 touchdowns. Zachariah Branch, if you listen to any podcasts or any show this week, his name was mentioned quite a bit. Hearing everything from he's the next Reggie Bush to next Percy Harvin, and there's a lot of names being thrown around by him. So he was explosive, got a return for a touchdown, has some good catches. I think he caught a touchdown. So it's really explosive. We'll see how he does as the year goes on, but true freshman really making some waves there. Things I noticed throughout the game, the USC offensive line really seemed to struggle. I noticed multiple line changes where they brought in new personnel. But that San Jose State got home to Caleb quite a bit, made him run around and make plays that were probably harder for him than they should be against a San Jose State team. And then the USC defense gave up some big plays and seemed like they still had some of the same issues from last year. They did have some, I think, a little bit better line with Anthony Lucas and Bear Alexander in there in the middle, but still some tackling issues, some cornerback issues that I saw as well. So I want to pass along to you guys, get your impressions of USC. Do we still feel like they're a playoff contender? Jess, I know you had them as a playoff contender, so we'll start with you. Any worry about your pick from last week about them being a playoff contender, or you just think it's a week one rust they have to kind of get off their system here?
Well, I do think it was week one rust, but that being said, I did expect a bit more from them. San Jose State isn't some, absolute dumpster fire of a team, but USC should have played a lot better. I've heard a lot of, like I've listened to podcasts, I've heard other people talking about it. And we discussed this a bit before the game. The defense is still a concern. I thought it was going to be better. I don't know what Lincoln Riley is doing. This was part of the issue at Oklahoma. They can't seem to figure out the defensive trenches. They're being gashed for yards in the run game. They seem to be trying to play a very aggressive style. I don't know if they have the personnel to truly make that work. Again, we talked about this a bit before. They're able to recruit these flashy players, the DBs, the wide receivers, quarterback, but Lincoln Riley just can't seem to figure out what to do on the defensive side of the ball, and particularly in the trenches. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if he needs to just kind of give over defensive coaching responsibilities completely, like just bring in a guy, change up this game. You do this. I'm going to focus all my attention where I clearly seem to care more about on the offensive side of the ball, but I still think they're a playoff team. They've clearly got the offensive firepower, but my confidence in them is a little shaken.
Jordan, what about you?
No, I don't think – I think this game kind of showed a lot of already faults. I mean, yeah, it's week one. It's your first game of the season, but you would think, if your defense is where you want your defense to be, then they would have a better outing. I mean, when you let up 198 rushing yards in the game, you had San Jose State had a guy with 6 carries, 108 yards. I mean, when you give up those numbers, it just kind of shows. I mean, and you have a secondary that allowed this, a receiver to have 3 touchdowns. It kind of shows that their defense is not where they want to be, and it's not where they should be to be a playoff caliber team. And you talk about Ohio State, and you talk about Michigan, you talk about Georgia, even Alabama, LSU. These teams have a defense that has shown and proven that they can stop 90% of teams. USC can barely stop San Jose State. And also, I'm worried about offense. If their O-line's not going to, Caleb's going to have to do everything. What happens if he gets hurt? What happens if anything happens with that?
Yeah, I mean, think about last year, he got hurt in that Utah game, right? And they ended up losing that game. So you have to worry about that for sure with that O-line. I mean, it's just they got to get that figured out. Now that you got to hope over a couple games they'll get the right personnel, because it may be just finding the right 5 that's sitting there and be the offensive line that you need. So you got to hope they have an easy schedule to start. So you got to hope before these first 6 games they figure that out before they go to South Bend. So, yeah, that's the USC side of it. So, again, I'd be interested to see how they do. They play Nevada, so never an easy team this week. But if they have the same issues, I think Nevada's obviously less talented than San Jose State. So you got to hope it's the score is a little more lopsided for your fact, and they do a little better on defense is what your hope would be. All right, let's move on to the other week 0 game that we want to discuss, and that is Notre Dame at Navy in Dublin. Highest rated game of the week. Obviously, there was no competition for it. Everybody was watching his first game of the weekend, but it was a good showing for my Heisman pick there, Sam Hartman. 19 of 23, 251 yards, 4 touchdowns. True freshman. I think I mentioned him on a couple shows last week. Jaden Greyhouse, 3 receptions, 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really good effort for his first game. Audric Estime, 16 carries, 95 yards and a touchdown. That's with being benched after a fumble that they got back in the first half. So overall, good game by the Stars there at Notre Dame. Sam Hartman, I think, threw it to 9 different people, spread it around. They didn't throw it to one single tight end in this game. So if you look at last year, all they threw it to was the tight end. This one, all they threw it to was not the tight end. So interesting showing. They were able to really take advantage of Navy, and they were really able to pound them up front with a much bigger and superior offensive and defensive lines, and they held them to 3 points. So good showing overall. So Jordan, what was your impressions for Notre Dame?
Consistency, both running the ball, passing the ball, really good discipline all around. I'm pretty sure there was like one holding penalty on a receiver the whole game. They just look kind of right now. Yeah, it's week 0, but they kind of look like one of the most all around teams right now. They have good defense. They have offense that has probably one of the best offensive lines in college football, and they can run and pass the ball, and it showed. So good showing, and I'm glad Notre Dame got that big win. Didn't have to worry at all. But just don't jinx it again, guys. And not you guys, but Twitter. I saw tweets saying that only last time Notre Dame held Navy to 0 was in 1998 or whatever. So next time, let's just not jinx it. It should have been 42-0. But
yeah, we should have. But yeah, no, I mean, that 3 points. They should whip for touchdown anyway if they're really trying to get back in the game. But Jess, obviously, you're not the biggest Notre Dame fan. So, from your perspective, what did you see on Sam Hartman and Notre Dame here?
I was very impressed. We all predicted Notre Dame to win, but I will admit I didn't expect them to be so thoroughly dominant that Navy just was never even in the game whatsoever. It seems like Notre Dame did whatever they wanted to, whenever they wanted to. I mean, it got boring. We were texting of it during the game. Like every time Navy had the ball, it was just like,
oh man, that Navy offense is just so hard to watch. I imagine playing against it must be so boring too, because it's just okay, yeah,
but it wasn't even just that their style of offense was boring. It's that we all knew that they weren't going anywhere. It felt like no matter what they did, Notre Dame had an answer. Again, it's week 0. Everyone was expecting Notre Dame to blow Navy out the water. No pun intended there. But yeah, see, there you go. I got to laugh.
There you go.
Thank you for the pity laugh, Tony. But I mean, I was very impressed. Like with USC, let's see how they do once they actually get some real competition. But I left week 0 more confident in Notre Dame's overall ability than USC's. I still have USC making the playoff, but again, as I said, my confidence in them is a bit shaken. My thoughts about Notre Dame have only been reinforced.
All right. So yeah, it's interesting to see these teams. I would say Notre Dame has an easy game this week, Tennessee State, but then they have a tough one next week against North Carolina State. So that's going to be kind of this true test to see what this offensive line, defensive line looks against a more capable opponent, I guess I would say. All right.